That moment wasn't an insult. It was a mirror, and it reflected a truth I could no longer personally ignore. And that's if you don't tell your story, someone else will. And you just may not like their version very much.
Welcome to Women Who Make It, real conversations with women in the food and beverage industry who are building careers, leading teams, and figuring it all out. After years of building Females in Food, I've had conversations with some of the most brilliant women in the industry, and they shared the real stuff. The pivots, the boundaries, the burnouts, and the moments of, is this even working, before it finally clicked. So I hit record, and now you get to hear it too. We're Women Who Make It, so let's dig in.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Women Who Make It. I'm Angela Dodd, your host, and today's episode is going to be a little different. There's no guests, it's just going to be you and me. And if you've been listening for a while, then you know this show has been incredibly packed with leadership lessons from women who have built careers, companies, and convictions that didn't exist before they showed up. And so today, I actually want to take this opportunity to share with you some things that have become clear to me through my leadership journey, but what I've also seen to be true for other women. And that's behind every one of these stories is a moment where women stopped waiting for someone to see her value and they started shaping the narrative themselves. That theme has been echoing in my own life, and I wanted to take this episode to pull back the curtain on a mindset shift and blueprint that frankly completely altered the trajectory of my career, and it changed how I communicated my value, how I built relationships, and how I walked into every room, from boardrooms to coffee shops to stages, differently. So if you're anything like me, and if you've ever done the work and delivered the results and still felt like people weren't connecting you to the impact that you were making, then this conversation just might be your missing link. What I'm going to share with you isn't theory. It's earned. Frankly, it was learned and earned the hard way. And once I understood it, everything about my leadership changed. And by the end of this episode, I hope that you're going to walk away with a clear sense of how to be recognized, heard, taken seriously, not by hoping the right people eventually notice you, but by intentionally building the rooms where your story, your ambition, and your leadership belong. So let's get into it. For a little bit of context, and before we dive into some of this blueprint, I think it's important to ground ourselves a bit in my story. So before Females in Food existed, I spent my career doing what so many of us are taught to do. I put my head down, I worked hard, I frankly let the results speak for themselves. And it all worked for quite some time. I was a food scientist and I commercialized food products. I leaned into my education. I got 2 master's degrees. I moved into sales leadership and was leading teams, managing major accounts, and helping drive growth for some of the biggest brands in the industry. I was building credibility, influence, and a career that made sense on paper. But here's the part that no one prepares you for. You can be excellent at what you do and still feel like no one connects you to the impact that you're making. And that tension is really what led me to start Females in Food, not because I wanted a platform or attention or a microphone, but because I saw a gap. Women were doing extraordinary things in our industry. My friends were, my coworkers were, yet most of us were navigating our ambition alone, apologizing for wanting more, or waiting for someone to tell us we were allowed to lead. I didn't create Females in Food to be seen. I created it because I needed a place where we could be seen. So in those early years, I told myself the story so many women believe, that leadership is about being behind the scenes, being humble, and letting your work do the talking. I poured myself into the programming, the partnerships, the events, the data, frankly, everything except myself. And in my mind, Females in Food was never about me. It was about us. And while that intention was noble, it was also incomplete, because here's what I didn't understand at the time. And keep in mind, we're, 6 years into all of this now. So a lot of lessons in between. But what I didn't understand at the time is that people don't follow concepts, they follow people. And movements are fueled by missions, but they are ignited by identities. Women weren't joining Females in Food because they headed to our landing page or they saw a logo that converted them to being a member. They joined because someone, me, a member, a speaker, a team member, made them feel something. But I kept removing myself from that narrative, convinced that positioning myself as the face of anything was self-centered. I was building something with real momentum, but really refusing to acknowledge my role in it. And eventually that disconnect caught up with me. So a few years ago, let's call it 2020, 2021, I've kind of lost track at this point, but the pandemic years in math, I was on a call with a director of DEI for a major CPG brand. I was so excited to have got the meeting. And I walked him through everything we had built, the growth, the partnerships, the impact, and really how FIF could serve this company. And I thought I had been crystal clear. And halfway through the conversation, he stopped me and he said, "Wait, you're the founder of this? Like, you built this?" And his face was literally that, as you can imagine. And I froze in that moment. Like, three realizations hit me at once. He wasn't missing information. I wasn't lacking clarity. I was absent from the story I had created. And I had positioned myself as a facilitator and not a founder. I made myself small so the work could feel big. And in doing so, I taught people not to see me. That moment wasn't an insult. It was a mirror, and it reflected a truth I could no longer personally ignore. And that's, if you don't tell your story, someone else will. And you just may not like their version very much. I wasn't invisible because people weren't paying attention. I was invisible because I hadn't stepped into my own narrative. So as we fast forward a bit, I want to be really clear about something. I didn't hang up from that call and suddenly become a different person. There was no dramatic transformation, no switch flipped overnight. In fact, I sat there and I felt all the feelings. I felt anger, disappointment, embarrassment, frustration. And frankly, I sat with those feelings probably longer than I should have or wanted to. And for a while, I resisted this idea that anything needed to change. I told myself, my work should be enough. I told myself people would see the value without me naming it. And because Females in Food wasn't designed to be about me, I convinced myself that stepping forward would somehow take something away from this community. But eventually I began to see a pattern in my behavior that I really couldn't ignore any longer, a pattern that had frankly been with me a really long time, and before I became a founder. It probably started back when I was a young scientist, and maybe if you're a scientist now listening to this, you can relate, but as a young scientist, specifically being a tall, blonde young scientist, implicitly and explicitly, I was taught that expertise was something you earned only after decades of experience, that the smartest people in the room were always someone older than me, that my role was to absorb and not assert, that it was safer to ask questions than to be the one to have the answers. And somewhere along that way, I internalized that leadership was something you grew into at the end of your career and not something that you stepped into at the beginning of it. Not now, not me, not yet. And when you carry that belief long enough, it doesn't matter how competent you are. You hesitate to claim the room, the idea, or the impact that's already yours. That mindset didn't disappear when I became a founder. Frankly, it followed me into the very thing that I built. And once I saw it, I could not unsee it. And that's when this entire blueprint all started to reveal itself. And I want to share a bit with you around that and some of the steps that you can take. So kind of lesson one or room number one is that I changed my language. I stopped talking like someone hoping to be chosen and started talking like someone who was already leading. I stopped diminishing my expertise, assuming people knew what my role was, framing my success as accidental, And I started saying, I built this. I lead this. Here's the impact we're making. The world didn't suddenly discover me. It finally saw who had been there the entire time. Next, number 2, I started building the rooms that could hold me. So once my language changed, I understood something else. It wasn't my ambition that was the issue. And so if you're someone listening right now who has been told you're too ambitious, you want to move too quick, please know that is not the issue. It was the room that I was in. And when I say room, I'm not talking about chandeliers and name badges. I'm talking about any environment where identity is reinforced, ambition is normalized, and access is exchanged. A room can be a conference, a text chain, a board meeting, a dinner, a podcast, a community like Females in Food. Some rooms reward ambitions, some rooms punish it. And once I understood that, I stopped asking, how am I going to get into that right room? And I started asking, what rooms am I willing to build? So if you're listening to this and you were around for the first FIF meetups, you will know they weren't glamorous. I don't think you need to overcomplicate things. I was like, let's get in a room, good food, good wine, good things are going to happen. They didn't have a big strategy behind them, but they were transformational. Women walked in unsure and they walked out connected. We didn't wait to be invited. We started creating our own invitation. And those rooms didn't just build Females in Food. They built me. And that brings me to like lesson number 3 in all this. As I started changing my language and I started building these rooms and understanding that, I started taking action before I felt ready. So if you've ever heard this, we've mentioned it in at our summit, and a few other speakers have mentioned it, but readiness is a myth. Readiness is a lie. And for a long time, I believed there would be a moment where everything aligned. The perfect timing, the perfect plan, the perfect clarity. I thought confidence was, frankly, something earned before you moved. It wasn't. And I still remember a phone call. Let's go back to 2019 when Females in Food was just this idea. I didn't have a business plan, a strategy, or even the words to describe what I was imagining. I just had this feeling that wouldn't really let go of me. And I was having a phone conversation with a friend, and I was waiting for this like clarity moment to come to me, for me to be able to say, this is exactly what it's going to be, what I'm going to do, and what it's going to be, 10 years from now. And my friend, she definitely wasn't waiting for that clarity. She stopped me mid conversation and she said, Angela, you have to just start. You got to just start. Put words on paper, buy the URL, figure out the website. You don't have to build clarity before you begin. You build clarity by beginning. And I remember feeling almost offended by the simplicity of it. Shout out to Daniela. She knows the story. She remembers too. When somebody tells you that, right? Like if you could get out of your own head, you would. And that's what I wanted to do, but I didn't know how to do it. And so that was some of the best advice for me is you just have to start. And surely something this big would require a roadmap. And these were all the thoughts I had. Surely I needed more credentials, more certainty, more proof, but I didn't. And if I had waited to feel qualified or confident, the Females in Food Summit wouldn't exist. This community wouldn't exist. This podcast wouldn't exist. None of this began with clarity. It began with motion. And so clarity didn't precede action. Action created the clarity. And you don't have to discover what you're building by thinking. You discover it by doing. And confidence is definitely not the prerequisite. It's the receipt for getting started. And so I didn't have a blueprint when I began. I had a spark, a sentence, and someone who refused to let me stay in my own head. And frankly, that's all it took, along with a lot of hard work, a lot of nights. So as we move forward through some of these lessons, I've been learning all these lessons over the years, and that moment of just starting and building and using your language and owning it all. Like the reason I'm coming forward now is that I was sitting at our summit we had a speaker. Her name was Maha Abulanin, and she was our closing keynote at our speaker. And she shared a framework that really resonated so deeply with me, not because it introduced something new, but because it articulated principles that I'd been living and witnessing inside Females in Food for years. But her work really reinforces a truth that I've seen over and over, and that's women don't need permission to lead. Value is something you create. It's not something you request. And reputation is a currency earned by action and not title. And what I appreciated about Maha's perspective wasn't that it redirected my own thinking. It frankly clarified it. It offered language for concepts I'd been teaching and building without ever formally naming it. And that's why, as a surprise for each of you, I'm actually giving her book away. I'm gifting quite a few of our listeners, let's call it like 30 of you, her book, because it was a turning point for me, because I believe others will find value in seeing these ideas presented as a system. It provides some really strong vocabulary for a mindset many women already possess. They've just never simply heard it or articulated it this clearly. And when ambition finally has language, it stops a feeling and starts becoming a strategy. And so I'm really excited to be able to gift so many of you guys this book that she shared with us at the summit. And so keep listening for a few more minutes until we get to the end of this episode, and I will tell you how to win one of those copies. All right. So as I said, that moment in the summit really started shifting something for me as I was listening to Maha talk. And I thought, I need to get some of these lessons out to you guys. I'm excited to be able to share some of what my journey has been in the hopes that it also helps you. So what happened when I stopped shrinking myself? And what happened when that shift happened when I stopped waiting? Females in Food became a national leadership platform. Companies didn't ask why, they asked, how do we join? Women in our community landed promotions, investors, board seats, and visibility. Our membership doubled. We sold out our summit. This podcast became a room of its own. So nothing changed because someone finally chose me. Everything changed because I chose myself. I hope that you're listening, and I hope you take this away, that you do not need permission. You do not need perfection, and you certainly do not need someone else's timeline. All you need is the language that reflects your value. You need the rooms that amplify your ambition. Surround yourself with those people. And action you take before you feel ready is key. Don't wait until you feel ready. You'll never feel ready. Take that action today and just start moving forward. That's the blueprint. It built me. It's building this community, and it can build you too. So until next time, go build the rooms that build you back. And if you're a little unsure of where to start as a next step in your new year, I just wanted to provide like 5 simple rooms that you can start building right now. So as I said, as we think about rooms, that can be anything, right? Host a coffee chat with a few women that you admire. Connection is a room. Update your LinkedIn language so it reflects who you are now versus who you used to be. Pitch yourself for a panel, an article, a podcast, instead of waiting to be discovered. Don't be a waiter. That's one of the rules in Maha's book that I love so much. I can't begin to tell you, it's actually quite difficult to be discovered. Like, you really have to put yourself out there and be your own advocate and be your own champion. Ask for that project or role that you've already been doing quietly, right? We all have been doing something on the side. Claim it. Claim that room that you're already in. Make sure that your managers and your colleagues know the work that you're contributing already. As another idea, you can attend an event where you don't know anyone. Sometimes the room that builds you is the one that also stretches you. Small rooms do build big reputations, and the rooms you build this year will shape the opportunities that you step into next year. So I hope you can take that away, and I hope it gives you the action and the words and the just maybe the extra push that you need to take that action today. I know I needed it, and I know how much, as I've reflected on my own journey, how much has changed when I really stepped into my own narrative and started owning my own work, changing my language, surrounding myself with the right people, everything changed. And that's why we're here today. So as I said, I do have a little gift for you guys. We're in the month of December. And so I have a little present. I will be giving away Maha's book. Her book is called The 7 Rules of Self-Reliance. Okay, so this is a little fun giveaway, but this is not one of those giveaways where you enter, do your part, and then discover that you had like 1 in a million chance of winning, only to watch like that prize go to like somebody's friend or Pilates instructor or neighbor named Janet. No, that's not this. Honestly, like those Instagram giveaways, like I don't know who wins those, truthfully. The beautiful part about being a new podcast and about you listening right now is that you're an early adopter. You're one of a thoughtfully sized, highly curated, elite group of ambitious humans who actually listened to the very end of this podcast, which means that your chances of winning one of these books are actually quite excellent. So how do we enter? And again, if you're listening to this podcast like way into 2026, like as a prior recording, this does not apply to you. This giveaway will run until the end of December 31st, 2025 here. So what do you need to do? I will also put this in the show notes, but go ahead and follow. If you're already listening, you probably already are following, but follow Women Who Make It and Females in Food on Instagram and LinkedIn. As I said, that's probably already a given. You're probably already doing it, but if you're not, go ahead and click follow. And then like and comment on this post for this episode. And in your comment, we would love for you to tag a leader who has inspired you to show up more fully, someone whose presence, language, or example changed how you see yourself. And that's it. You don't need to tag your entire graduating class, no blood oath, no secret passcode, just participation and appreciation in this season of giving. I think it's really important to acknowledge those people who have helped us along our way. So I'll choose the winners, as I said, before the year end of 2025, and I will send the books directly to you. No mysterious randomizer tool, no rigged results, no Janet, just real women investing in real women, which, if you think about it, is a room in itself. So until next time, we aren't just making food. We're making moves. We're women who make it. Thanks so much.